There's a light in the sky, rising in the air. There's a feeling so strong. It's time to light the fire, like a bright shining light. Getting more out of life, sharing time with friends, feeling so strong.
Hello and welcome to the House of Wellness with me, Luke Darcy, and my good friend Joe Stanley. Hello, Joe.
Das, as always, you know, I love being here with you, and it's fantastic to see sports stadiums, live entertainment venues and the city streets teeming with people once more. Life finally feels like it's returning to normal.
You know, it reminded me of that recently, Joe, being at the mighty MCG for Dreamtime at the G. It's a marquee event on the calendar to see 70,000 people there celebrating the great contribution of our Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander players was brilliant. It's returned leagues to what they should be. The roar of a live crowd, to me, makes all the difference at a sporting event.
Absolutely love it. You know, I'm a Collingwood supporter, so there's nothing better to me than a full MCG. And a sport that has bounced back, though, bigger than ever is netball. Apparently, netball fans are flocking back to live games in record numbers. Super netball crowds are bigger this year than they were even pre-pandemic, which I absolutely love. It's a great sport.
It's brilliant. Our national team, the Diamonds, are right now prepping for the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and we can't wait to see them dominate the court come July. Now, someone who always draws a crowd is journalist Jackie Felgate. Great to see you again, Jackie.
Hi, Das and Joe. Usually the only crowd that's following me is my kids wanting some food. But
I'm familiar with that. It's great to have you, Jackie.
Thank you. And plenty happening in the world of health and science. We know that women and couples can freeze and store their eggs and embryos, right? Well, blood and other human biological samples are also being stored to help research and prevent a stack of diseases. They're known as biobanks, and right now a new one in Victoria is helping to save the lives of hundreds of breast cancer survivors. By reanalysing tens of thousands of stored breast cancer samples, some which date back to the 90s, Monash University scientists have uncovered new cancer-causing mutations. It's a major breakthrough that could help prevent fresh cases.
Oh, it's so exciting, isn't it, to think that science and research is a step ahead of the disease, we hope, and particularly that they can look back and track a woman's risk of having cancer again. It's amazing.
And I wonder if you could go back 200 years and analyse what the blood samples were like that time ago, what we would learn from generations gone by.
That's exactly right, Das, and it lets women know how at risk their kids might be too. So forewarned really is forearmed, and the work being done at the Clayton Biobank is life-saving. And speaking of life-saving, detection work, meet Patron. This heroic Jack Russell Terrier has sniffed out more than 200 Russian explosives during the Ukraine conflict. He was recently honoured by President Zelensky, who presented him and his handler with medals for courage and dedicated service. Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely amazing. Our dogs, would they be there? Can you see Dennis?
No,
in any use whatsoever?
No, he has got no redeemable feature, Dennis, apart from being the number one member of our family.
Oh.
But that is extraordinary, isn't it, to see what's already happening and, you know, the amount of use for dogs in terms of comfort and care and saving lives. Great story, that one.
I have two Jack Russell Terriers, obviously not as well trained as Patron, but let's take a little change of tack now, and I'm going to talk about prunes. That's right, prunes. We typically think of them as something that old people eat for breakfast, but new research is urging us all to start. I never knew that a prune was a dried plum. Darcy, you're across all this, aren't you, with your diet?
I'm going to have to put my hand up on that. I wasn't aware that was where the prune came from. It's got a bit of the, reminds me a bit of Nanadas, the prune, so it needs a bit of a makeover, I think.
Well,
but they're pretty good for you.
Look, I love the fact that all of that food that the older generation did eat, you know, way back in the day, we're now remembering it and going, oh, actually, there was some goodness to it. Our elders had the right idea.
Perhaps older is indeed wiser. Exactly right. Eating 100 grams, or about 10 prunes every day for a year, was found to improve the mineral density of bones and help prevent bone loss.
Sounds like a lot of 10 a day. that sounds...
What else is happening there?
I think it's a good effort.
And while we're talking prunes, can I just add that June is Bowel Cancer Awareness Month. So if you're over 50, this is a reminder to do your bowel screening test.
Absolutely, but I can't tell you how often, Jack, we've had bowel specialists on the show who say that that test should be available from the age of 45 because of the rising rates of bowel cancer in young people.
It's a good point, Joe, and you're never too young to get it, and it's the most treatable cancer if it's detected early as well, Jack.
Indeed. So support Bowel Cancer Australia and check out the website to get a real understanding of what an essential service they provide.
Thank you, Jackie. As always, up next, we meet the Aussie scientists leading the fight against motor neuron disease and tell you about a much-loved event's return to the MCG. That's right after this on the House and Wellness. One of my absolute favourite events of every footy calendar year is the Big Freeze at the MCG. It's the annual clash between Collingwood and Melbourne, and it's about to light up the G once more with its famous celebrity ice slide and a sea of blue beanies. It's all about the fight against motor neuron disease. And Joe and Jack, when Neil Danaher asked you to participate, it is as good an honour as you could possibly imagine. And what Neil and his family have done to put MND on the map and support people who've had this tragic illness. It's one of the great stories that I think I've seen in recent times.
It's truly amazing. Now, you did the first slide, I understand. You had no idea what you were being asked to do, really.
And you wore gloves.
Well, we wore leather gloves, Jack. We look back, but I remember getting the call saying, Neil, if Neil rings and asks you to get involved, whatever you need to do. So, and you thought, oh, maybe, you know, they'll just have a slightly cool pool. And Neil's down the bottom, loading up bags of ice with a big smile on his face, and take your breath away was how I described it. So very, very fortunate to be part of that. The public stadium event had to be modified the last couple of years, as you know really well, Jack, due to COVID. So its full-scale return in 2022 is just really exciting. And great news, it's heading to South Australia and Western Australia this year on Saturday, the 18th of June.
MND is known as the beast. It's a horrible and debilitating illness that gradually takes a person's use of their arms and legs, their ability to eat and swallow, their speech, and ultimately their ability to breathe. And footy legend Neil Danaher and his daughter Beck are two of the high-profile faces who are working tirelessly to find a cure.
Neil co-founded the group Fight MND, which has been instrumental in raising funds and awareness, especially for scientists doing incredible work at the Florey Institute. Since the charity was founded in 2014, Fight MND has raised more than $48 million to research a cure, Darcy.
Amazing effort. And sadly, one of Fight MND's other founders, Dr. Ian Davis, lost his battle with the disease in 2018. But part of his legacy was inspiring neuroscientist Beck Strand, the research director at Fight MND, to continue the battle to find a cure and beat the beast.
Yeah, I'm just looking to set up a time to come in for a site visit and hear how the project's going.
I kind of fell into working on MND. I was looking to do a PhD in the neuroscience field and I just read about a project on MND. I'd never heard about it before. And part of the project was that I got supported for a PhD scholarship through a community Rotary clubs. And ever since that day, and I met those people in that community who really rallied behind the cause, I really wanted to be able to work in MND and do something to try to help this disease.
Beck completed her PhD and was working at the Florey Neuroscience Institute in Melbourne when she met cancer doctor Ian Davis, who'd been diagnosed with MND.
When he was diagnosed with MND, he just wouldn't accept that there was nothing available and there was nothing in the pipeline. And he had a vision for changing that sense of that lack of hope that there was for people who were diagnosed with MND.
It was that vision that inspired Beck to leave the Florey Institute and become part of Fight MND with Dr. Ian Davis.
When I started working with Ian, he was incredibly motivated, incredibly passionate. He would work 24/7, really. And as his disease started to progress and he became less able to do things, I was able to take on a lot of what he was doing. And after he died, I really feel that importance of continuing his work. It's enormous shoes to fill. And I know the saying goes, you stand on the shoulder of giants and there's probably no bigger giant than Ian Davis.
These days, Beck isn't so hands-on. She oversees all the research investments and monitors the progress of projects and any therapeutics that may help people living with MND.
Everything you do in the lab, you never just do it once. You need to repeat it and really validate that what you've seen is real. So a lot of the way that we actually invest in research came from Ian's background. So before Ian was diagnosed, he was a cancer doctor and he would have patients come in to see him and he'd be able to offer them different treatment options or to offer them opportunities to participate in clinical trials of new experimental drugs that were coming through the pipeline.
So FightMND have actually transformed the MND research landscape in Australia and indeed the world.
Associate Professor Brad Turner heads up the MND Research Laboratory, leading a large research team investigating the causes of MND, as well as developing effective treatment approaches for the disease.
Yeah, this is a really exciting program, and this is what the funding has purchased. So this is a dedicated facility, and what we're doing is we're growing MND patient cells in the Petri dish.
This cutting-edge drug screening platform enables nerve cells of MND patients to be screened against hundreds and thousands of prescription medications, looking for that one hit that will work for MND.
So this is MND under the microscope. You can see that these cells are starting to break down and they're losing contact and communication with other cells. This is exactly the disease process that occurs in patients with MND.
Getting life-saving drugs into MND patients as quickly as possible is critical, and new technology like this robotic microscope accelerates the process.
Using traditional clinical trials, these trials can take 10 to 15 years. Patients with MND cannot wait. You know, we're talking here about generations of MND patients being lost. And with the aid of this high-end equipment, we're able to accelerate the process of finding effective drugs for motor neuron disease, probably by a factor of about 30.
So MND is a really complex disease, and you know, we don't know what the cause of it is. So really getting to really understanding what that cause of MND, it could be really critical to treating it. At the same time, from studying MND, we also know a number of different mechanisms that are happening as the disease progresses, and so developing treatments against these sort of later stage mechanisms of disease could also help to slow the disease down, and that would have an enormous impact on people who are living with MND. You know, give them some more time to spend with their family and loved ones, and to also improve their quality of life while they're battling the disease.
Tell me about Neil Danaher and his family and the incredible commitment Neil has made to raising awareness of this disease.
So Neil's an incredibly smart man, just so committed to the cause, and his family, not just his immediate family, his extended family, they really have got behind this, and they're a big player in why FightMND is such a success. And for Neil to really be going through his disease so publicly, it's incredibly brave, it's incredibly strong, but I think it's really who Neil is.
While Beck's role at FightMND takes her away from the lab discovering new treatments, seeing the impact they're having inspires her to keep going to fund a breakthrough in the fight of this disease.
I love my job so much. It's incredible to be part of such a great organisation. You know, I love science, I like research, but I also love sport. I love the competitiveness of sport, and I love the power of sport and community. So seeing how sport can really drive that community togetherness and have a real impact on a disease like MND, yeah, as much as I miss being in the lab, I'm where I should be, and yeah, I'm very honoured to be working for FightMND.
More than 2,000 people are currently battling MND in Australia. The work Beck and her team are doing through FightMND has been an absolute game changer for them and their families.
The charity has supported 11 clinical trials so far, which has given over 500 patients the chance to take part.
And 17 new therapies are also being developed and tested, all thanks to the fundraising and research work of FightMND.
The Big Freeze AFL game kicks off Monday, June 13. So if you get to the G, if you can, or head online to buy a blue beanie. It's a badge of honour to have one of the updated, but you can't have the year before. No. You get told off in the park, and so you should buy your new beanie. It's fantastic work. FightMND. We'll be back after this on the House of Wellness.
We've all been there, haven't we? We're with a friend, maybe it's a bit noisy, so we lean in to have a listen, and then we get a whiff of their breath and, ooh, not good. There are plenty of reasons why people have bad breath, or halitosis as it's called. Now, we all know that things like garlic and onions can do it, and there can be things like sinus or stomach problems. But overwhelmingly, the most common cause is poor dental hygiene. So what's going on here? Well, when we don't brush properly, bits of food get stuck between our teeth, and then the bacteria in our mouths can get to work. And when the bacteria break down the food, they release sulfurous gases, things that smell like rotten eggs. So if you don't brush your teeth properly, you risk really bad smelling breath. In Roman times, Pliny the Elder recommended cleaning your mouth with honey and burnt mouse dung. Those Romans must have had really horrible breath if the smell of toasted mouse poo was an improvement. Other treatments were spices like cloves and ginger, and herbs like rosemary and parsley. But you'll note that mint is missing. So when did mint become associated with nice breath? Well, it turns out it was all a marketing ploy. Companies like Pepsodent, Listerine and Lifesavers started saying that mint meant fresh breath. And to this day, we still believe that minty breath is fresh breath. So much so that in America, they spend over $1 billion every year on breath freshening products. Now, I'm often asked, why is morning breath so bad? Well, if you think about it, in the 7 to 8 hours when we're asleep, if there are any food particles, the bacteria have plenty of time to get to work. And when we're asleep, the flow of saliva is reduced, and the dryness in the mouth is something bacteria love. Mouth breathing and alcohol also contribute to the dryness, which is why after you've had a big night out, your breath can smell pretty bad. There's another group of people who think they have bad breath, but actually they don't. And this is surprisingly common in my medical practice. So when someone comes in and says, "Oh, doctor, I've got really bad smelling breath," first thing I do is get up close and personal and have a good old sniff. And if you have a look at the size of my smelling apparatus, you'll know I've got a pretty good sense of smell. And quite often what I'm smelling is just fine. So for those people, they don't need treatment for halitosis, but for their underlying anxiety. Actually, is my breath okay?
Joe, you and I are total believers in the power of the breath.
Oh, absolutely does. For me, there is a direct correlation between how calmly and deeply I'm breathing and my mental health and the day that I'm having.
And it's a simple thing, isn't it, to actually concentrate and take a deep breath and the benefits that can have. An average person breathes about 22,000 times a day. So it's no wonder that focusing on that simple act of breathing can be truly life-changing.
It's all about being mindful and conscious of air going in and out. I love the exhale, it's my favourite part. Yet how often do we really think about the amazing organ that provides the gift of life, the lungs? Most of us probably don't until something goes wrong. Here to tell us the ins and outs of respiration, please welcome lung expert Professor Sarath Ranganathan.
Hi there, Joe. Very nice to meet you.
Lovely to have you on the show.
Now, lungs are organs that often don't come under the spotlight, yet that when you think about it, they're incredibly important, Sarath. I mean, breath is life after all when you think about it, I suppose.
Well, we talk about taking our first breath and then our last breath, so I suppose that the lungs, in a way, are defining the whole of our life. But many people don't really give it much thought. About half of people never even think about their lung health, and yet 1 in 3 Australians have actually got a lung problem as we speak, so it's really quite important.
This might sound like an odd question, but what exactly do the lungs do?
It's not an odd question, it's an important question. Probably the most important thing the lungs do is enable us to get oxygen into our body, and oxygen fuels all our muscles and all our cells and all our activities in the body. And then the other component of that is to get rid of the waste gas from the body, which is carbon dioxide. So that's the main thing that it does. And to be able to do that, the lungs are enormous. It's got an enormous surface area. So actually, if you spread the lungs out, it'd be the size of a tennis court, about 70 metres squared. So that really gives rise to the second thing that the lung does, is because if you've got such a massive surface area, you can breathe in all sorts of dust and bugs and viruses and things like that. So it actually has a sort of defence thing to try and clear that stuff out. And so it does that by lots of hair cells that line the lung and a lining of fluid. So it traps things in the fluid and it sort of beats that stuff out. And so if you're polite like yourself, Joe, when it gets up to the top of your throat, you probably swallow it. Luke, I've seen you on the pitch, you probably spit that out.
I was to get in my car this morning, actually. That's a bit close to home.
OK. Was Darcy right? 22,000 times a day that we breathe in and out?
Yep, 22,000 times a day. So an adult takes about 15 breaths a minute. A kid breathes much faster. For a baby, it's up to about 40 times a minute.
And if that breathing becomes impaired, what is actually happening to the lungs?
Well, the lung's trying to get the oxygen into the deepest parts of the lung to get that into the blood. So if it's impaired, it means that the air isn't moving properly through the lung, or the very edges of the lung where it's going into the blood is somehow, it's got a problem, so that the oxygen isn't reaching the blood. And two things can happen related to the function. One is you don't get enough oxygen in, and we call that hypoxia. Or the second thing is you don't get the waste gas out, and therefore you get too much carbon dioxide. And those are the two types of ways that the lung can completely pack in, and we call that respiratory failure.
Sarah, we're inundated with what type of food to eat, a whole range of different things to live a healthy lifestyle, but we don't often talk about lung health. How do we maintain healthy lungs?
Well, the best thing is to avoid things that are going to irritate the lungs or harm them. And that means avoiding smoking, vaping. If you're doing those things, stopping, never too late. And then other things that can enhance your health, things to protect you further might be vaccinations. So COVID is a lung infection, of course, and that can cause some harm if you're not vaccinated against it. Influenza, every year you can get the flu jab, that will protect you. That's a lung infection as well. You can protect yourself against pneumonia, which is a bacterial infection. There's a jab for that too. And whooping cough is another one. So protecting yourself with vaccination is really important. And probably the third way is just looking after yourself. You know, exercise is a great way of improving how your lungs work, how efficient they are, and the efficiency with which you get oxygen in and out the body. That really does, it's great for well-being and great for the well-being of lungs.
So what does a healthy lung look like, and are both lungs the same size?
The right lung's a bit bigger than the left lung, and it's got 3 lobes in it. The left lung's only got 2, and a little sort of tongue-like sliver, which we call the lingula. And the left lung's different because the heart sits in there. That's the main reason it's different. If you were to look at a healthy lung, it would look sort of nice and pink. It would be spongy, it'd be a bit stretchy. We call that compliant, meaning it sort of can open up and deflate very easily. A not so healthy lung doesn't look pink at all. It looks sort of mottled. If you're exposed to dust like coal miners used to, very black, horrible lungs as well. Can be a bit stiff, can be scarred. It can be like sort of scar tissue in there. Not a pleasant sight at all.
So how much oxygen does the average lung breathe in?
Well, with every breath, if you're at rest, it's about half a litre, which is about 7.5 litres a minute, and an amazing figure of 11,000 litres a day.
So what kind of signs should we look out for if we actually should be investigating our lung health?
Well, the main signs are cough, particularly a cough that goes on for a long time, like 3 weeks or more. That means it might be significant. Breathlessness. A lot of people who are breathless just think they're not fit, when in fact it could be a problem with the lungs. Coughing up lots of phlegm, certainly if you cough up blood, most people are a bit concerned when you cough up blood, that's certainly not normal. And wheezing. Wheezing is a sort of breathing noise due to your airways being a bit tight. It's hard to get air out of your lungs.
I read somewhere that lungs are the only organs that float in water. Is that true? And if so, why?
It is true, and there's actually a physiological explanation. And we call that anatomical dead space. And what I mean by that is there's a part of the lung where you can never get the air out, no matter how hard you breathe out. It's about a litre's worth. So actually, even if you think you've taken all the air out of your lung, there's still a litre in there, and they'll still act like a pair of floaties.
So there's an online lung check. What does that show, and should everyone be taking that test?
Everyone should be taking the test. 36,000 people this month have taken the test in Australia. And you can find that on the Lung Foundation Australia website. That's the peak body for lung health conditions. It takes 2 minutes to do. It's quite important because of the 36,000 people that have done it this month, about 2,000 we've actually referred on to see their GP, about 1 in 20. So those are people that didn't really have any idea that there was something potentially wrong with their lungs. So I'd certainly recommend everyone go and have a look at that. Just 2 minutes.
And is it the sort of thing that you want to catch any kind of problems with your lungs as early as possible, right?
I think, you know, just like most chronic health conditions, the earlier you get things, the better chance you have of curing them. And let's think of the worst case scenario, something like lung cancer. The survival for lung cancer hasn't really improved for many years. It's still only about 20% that survive. And so the only way we're really going to start improving on that is for trying to diagnose it earlier, coupled with lots of new research that goes into that condition. So yeah, absolutely critical to try and get our lung problems sorted out as early as possible.
What percentage of lung cancer is caused by smoking?
Probably around 90%, but there's a significant proportion that's not caused by smoking. And it's important as well because part of the reason that lung cancer is not a very well-researched condition and is not funded very well for research is because there's a stigma associated with it. And we really want to break that stigma because we think we can do a lot better than that 20% outcome.
Professor, it's been an enlightening conversation. We're all going to take a deep breath now and say thank you very much for coming in and sharing some insight into better lung health. We appreciate you joining us.
Welcome and pleasure. Thanks very much indeed.
GQ, there's a few things we can be certain of in this life, and that's that it's going to rain the day after you wash your car, that you're going to need something you literally just threw out, and the ageing process.
And like a fine wine, Hinesy, I'm ageing gracefully.
That's because you have an appreciation for the herbal world and how it contributes to our health and well-being as the years tick by. Take turmeric, for example.
One of my favourites, Hinesy. Originating from the roots of the curcuma longa plant, it's been used for centuries in Ayurvedic medicine.
And this century-long secret is turmeric's active compound, curcumin. It's a powerful antioxidant and anti-inflammatory.
These are both important allies because both inflammation and oxidation play a role in speeding up our natural ageing process and may be responsible for illness. Turmeric also helps provide relief for mild rheumatic aches and pains and mild osteoarthritic pain, which occurs as we age.
How cool is it that we have a spice that can get us up and moving that also makes our recipes taste great? But the problem with turmeric and curcumin is it's not easily absorbed in food.
And that's when we can turn to supplementation.
Gerald, I don't say this often, but I'm going to say it today. You are wise beyond your years.
Could we record that? I don't believe...
No. So one compliment day only, that is it. This is a one-time only a thing. Don't replay this.
The A to Z of Vitamins is brought to you by Wagner Turmeric, traditionally used in Ayurvedic medicine to assist in the temporary relief of mild rheumatic aches and pains and to help relieve mild osteopathic pain.
There's that magic spice again, turmeric, and I have to say at this time of year I love a good curry, I love soups, pies, I love stew, or I love a slow-cooked stew, don't you? I love it. How do you go with the spicy food though, Darcy? Because does it work with the celiac thing?
Spice is fine. My mother-in-law has got Sri Lankan descent, so there's a fair bit of spice that comes through that side of the family. We're getting better, not too much, but a little bit of flavour.
Yeah, well, we just heard that spices can be a great source of nutrients, and if our body is lacking some of the essential ones, one place it can show is on our fingernails. Like zinc, a deficiency can appear as those white spots that some people get, which I've always wondered what those white spots are.
Were you a nail biter?
No. You?
No, not for me, no. But it's you can see it's a bit of a compulsion, isn't it? Nail biting is right up there on the list of those habits that I find a little bit like the fingernails going down a blackboard.
Some people can't help it though, but raggedy nails aren't a good look either. Plus the area under your nails is a catch-all cesspit for germs and bacteria. Ugh, so gnawing on them isn't a great idea. In our quest to nail good finger health, we turned to an expert dermatologist.
I think that a lot of patients would have no idea that a dermatologist deals with nail problems, and it's often something that they're really embarrassed about because the nails are on show, whether it's on your hands or on your feet if you're wearing thongs or slippers of some sort. It's something that a lot of people try to cover up, but there's actually a lot that can be done to help the nails. When a patient presents with problems with the nails, the most common things that I see are changes in the nail plate colour, often white or grey or even yellow discoloration, as well as crumbling off the nail plate and nail plate fragility. And this may be a sign of a nail fungal bed infection, and fungi are really common and they're really hard to kill. It probably affects up to 60% of the population at some point, so it's really important to have a good look at the nails to make sure that they're a light, healthy pink colour and that they look all the same. When you have a fungal nail infection, it can be quite slow growing because the nails actually take 9 to 12 months to grow out. So it might not be something that you see initially, but over time, the colour and the thickness of the nail plate can really be the telltale signs. So lifting off the nail plate from the nail bed may be a sign that there's actually some yeast that has got in under the nail plate. So yeast is just like a fungi, but it's an organism that can grow and prevent the nail plate from attaching to the nail bed. We see this really commonly in patients who tend to wash their hands a lot or do a lot of wet work. For example, gardeners or patients who need to wash their hands frequently for their job. Vertical ridging of the nail is actually really common and does happen as we get older. It's very genetically driven and may also relate to nail trauma. So simply hitting our nails over time, or if we have a very hands-on job, we tend to notice that the nail plate can get slightly damaged with time. There's not a whole lot that can be done about it, but the most important thing is it doesn't mean the nails are unhealthy. Certainly when I was growing up, Mum used to say, oh, the white spots on your nails means you need to drink more milk. Look, the truth is that certain mineral deficiencies such as zinc and calcium can cause white spots on the nails. Sometimes they appear for no reason and actually just disappear by themselves. So not necessarily a sign that someone isn't drinking enough milk or having enough cheese. By and large, the care of the fingernails and the toenails are fairly similar. There is a tendency, particularly more so for females than for males, to get their nails done by manicurists on a very regular basis and to actually push their cuticles back. But the cuticles are a really important protector of our skin and of our nails, and they form a really good seal to prevent bacteria, viruses, soaps and other harmful pathogens getting in and causing nail problems. So keeping our nails actually clean, short and not overdoing it is one of the most important things that I can tell my patients to do.
There's no doubt that one of the best things we can do for our health is make sure we have a positive relationship with food, Joe, and we often hear phrases like comfort food or eating our feelings. And you know that my weakness is hot chips. Got me again on Sunday night, Joe. It's the one thing, I get that smell, it's a comfort food for me.
Oh my gosh, hot chips are absolutely therapy, I think. But you know, the older I get, the less I punish myself for if I'm craving something and I know it's going to make me feel emotionally great. I just kind of do it rather than have that food guilt anymore. So go for it.
Well, our poster boy for a healthy diet is the one and only Luke Hines. Regular exercise and a positive mindset. That's Hinesy. But believe it or not, he's also human. Hinesy has to work like the rest of us to stay on top of changing moods and the curveballs life throws his way.
Hinesy is living proof that you can overcome life's stresses and obstacles without making unhealthy choices, and that nourishing your stomach and your soul is something we can all achieve if we put a little more love into our diets.
Having a healthier relationship with food is so important, especially when it comes to understanding how our emotions affect our food choices. Now, we've all been there. We've come home from work, we're tired, stressed and emotional. In these situations, it's vital that we don't use food as an emotional crutch, because too often in these circumstances, the foods we reach for aren't good for us at all. This recipe will tick the emotional eating box whilst still being genuinely good for you. When we talk about emotional eating, it's often associated with lots of fats, lots of carbs and lots of sugars. Now, these lemony passion fruit cheesecakes tick all the comfort boxes when it comes to emotional eating, but the difference here is that we're using real food ingredient alternatives that are much better for you. Now, today we're using almond meal instead of white processed and refined flour, which will keep the carbs down. Now, when it comes to the sugar, we're using an unprocessed natural alternative in the form of coconut sugar. To bring it all together, we're using a real food form of fat, just pure grass-fed organic butter. As I bring the base together, what I love is that they're 3 simple ingredients, unlike their processed and refined counterparts, which are often associated with emotional or comfort eating. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I've chosen to use the lower fat versions of the cream cheese and the sour cream. Now, that is because it reduces the calories significantly overall. Now, the reason people struggle with their weight is because they're consuming too many calories in a day than they're burning. Now, by reducing the calories in these cheesecakes, you can still have a treat that you enjoy that tastes absolutely awesome without the density of the calories in each and every bite. The lemon juice adds a lovely tartness to this recipe and it cuts through that rich, fatty flavour. Once you've got your lemon juice, add in your vanilla bean, coconut sugar, and a couple of eggs. Give it a good whisk until it's well combined, smooth and creamy. Spoon your filling onto your prepared base, then transfer to the oven and bake at 180 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes, or until golden brown on top and cooked through. One factor we have to be mindful of when it comes to emotional eating is what triggers certain food choices. It could be a breakup that leads us to devour an entire tub of ice cream, or a stressful day of work equals an entire block of chocolate on the couch. We need to flip that on its head, and rather than reaching for processed and refined foods, we need to swap it out for, say, a walk, a workout, connecting with a loved one, or spending time with an animal. And if you are going to choose food as that emotional crutch, make sure it is cooked from scratch at home with real food and love. Now, you might not traditionally view a cheesecake as a healthy alternative, but I've reduced the portion size, reduced the calories, and removed any processed and refined ingredients, making it emotional eating safe. Plus, if you've got a sweet tooth, the passion fruit and mixed berries really hit the spot.
Hinesy is so across the emotional side of how we eat, and one story I know he'd love because he is a tactile kind of guy is the health benefits of hugging. Studies show that hugging can reduce inflammation, blood pressure and even the severity of the common cold.
We all need human touch. I'm sure that's why so many people were affected during lockdown, missing out on that physical contact. Just a small hug from someone can lift your mood. Do you like a hug, Darcy?
Well, no. As a rule.
He's not into it. I've tried.
Yeah.
He's not into it.
Well, but Hinesy's a hugger,
away?
and I give Hinesy a hug because he's a hugger. I think if you're with another hugger, it's not necessarily... It's boarding school, Joe. It's caused some issues for me. But there are different types of hugs. You can... For the greeting, no, as I'm getting older, I think I'm getting better at it. To say goodbye, I think, is probably fair enough as well.
What about a hug from your kids?
Oh, no, little Maxie's a hugger, my 12-year-old. He's all over it. Not so much the 17-year-old daughter.
Well, you might like to hug someone just to feel close to them. I also read that some people who are lonely actually pay for a hug from a professional hugger. We might get a professional hugger in here.
Oh, that is so very sad, though, to think that people are lonely like that. And that's why I'm not much of a hugger, but if I see someone, particularly someone who's senior, walking down the street, I like to give them a smile or a little chat, because it might be their only interaction that day. I don't hug them, though.
Low thyroid or hypothyroidism is an issue affecting up to 15% of people over 60. Sadly, the symptoms of low thyroid function often mimic some of the ones we get as we get older. So hair loss, brittle nails, weight gain, fluid retention, memory issues, lethargy, these are issues that can be associated with your thyroid function. So if these symptoms worry you and you haven't had your thyroid checked, then it's time to do so. The important thing is don't ignore them, get some advice. 6 out of 10 middle-aged men live with an enlarged prostate. We see that as interruptions to their sleep, poor urine flow, frequency of urination, so poor sleep quality for the whole bedroom. The specific herb to help here is saw palmetto because it interrupts the conversion of testosterone to the breakdown product which causes prostates to enlarge. Controlling your stress, getting good quality sleep, eating sensibly with plenty of fibre are all important components of this as well. The important thing is don't ignore the symptoms, discuss them with your doctor for better quality of life.
Earlier, we touched on common bad habits, including biting your nails. Another is letting your dog share your bed or lick your face. Can you relate to that, Jo? Does Daisy lick your face?
Oh, she would like to, but no, we have strict boundaries that there is no mouth-to-mouth contact between the dog and myself or anyone in the house. How gross.
I'm glad to hear it. OK, so keeping the dogs out of the bed and away from your face is a good idea. But would you or have you ever taken your dogs with you to the office?
No, I can't say Dennis has ever made his... Oh, actually, he has. He came in because he's named after Dennis Committee, the legendary AFL commentator. He came in to meet Dennis. But bring your dog to work day is a bit of a common thing. I don't mind that.
Yeah, I think it's a really beautiful thing to have any kind of animals around the office that kind of relaxes people, particularly if it's a high-stress environment. That could be lovely.
The only problem is taking them out. Don't leave them in the office all day, because we used to have them in our office and there were quite a few accidents.
Were there?
Our pets got used to having us at home during the pandemic, of course, and now so many are being left on their own, and it's making some pet owners anxious. So online retail giant Amazon Australia has packaged up a Pooch Perfect solution. It's letting employees bring their dogs to work. So far, more than 8,000 hounds have registered for the company's Dogs at Work program, a great boost to workers' morale and their mental health.
Wow, it's
I love that.
good initiative, isn't it, from the team at Amazon? Yeah. That's our show for today. Thank you, Jackie. Great to see you as always.
You too.
And Jo, you'll be hitting the airwaves on Sunday with Gerald Quigley for the House of Wellness radio show.
I will, of course, plus pick up a copy of the House of Wellness lift-outs this weekend featuring Aussie cricketer Pat Cummins.
What a superstar he is. Thanks for joining us. As always, thanks to our great friends at Chemist Warehouse. We'll see you again soon.